I'm Shannon Jackson, your host of a Healthy Push podcast. I struggled with anxiety, panic disorder, and agoraphobia for 15 years. Everything used to be hard for me. Even just driving 5 minutes from my house used to feel impossible. But now I absolutely live for travel and adventure, and I experience lots of peace and joy. I've not only reclaimed my life, but I've helped hundreds of others to do the same. Here, we stop managing anxiety and instead we create a healthy relationship with it. One where you say goodbye to the anxious thoughts, symptoms, panic attacks, and fears, and you actually live your life. Forget complicated strategies, quick fixes, or the same old hacks you've heard 100 times before. Each week, I'll bring you simple, actionable advice and honest conversations that lead to real, long-term healing. You aren't just an anxious person, my friend. There are reasons why you're struggling with anxiety, and these are things you can fix and heal from. And this is where that journey begins. Welcome. You're right where you're meant to be. Okay, I have another one of my Panic to Peace students here with me, and I am so happy always to have these conversations. Heather took Panic to Peace almost 2 years ago, so September 2023. I cannot believe it's been that long, but we've checked in recently, so I've heard how things are going, and she's kept me in the loop throughout the years, and it's just been really cool to follow her journey, and I'm so excited for you, the listener, to get to hear it and get some knowledge from Heather. So, Heather, welcome to a Healthy Push podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I really am.
Oh, it's going to be so good. So, let's just start. Tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, so a little bit about me without being too long. Well, I experienced my first panic attack when I was about 14. And it's like important for me to say that I found out later on in therapy that that came from sort of a little bit of a traumatic event of my older brother leaving. So I think that I was genetically disposed to be anxious. I was a very anxious kid, kind of thing, like stomach aches and that kind of stuff. But it didn't really manifest into like a full blown panic attack until I was like 14. And then it went a couple years until I was beginning my 11th grade year of school and I had to leave because my panic attacks were so bad. And so this is obviously in the 90s, which there wasn't like a lot of verbiage around anxiety. It was more depression at the time. And so my mom took me to the doctor. They gave me like some very old bedwetting medicine called imipramine. That was very strange. Yeah, very old antidepressant that did not help me at all. It was Kaiser, and they were just kind of like, well, here's a couple books that you can check out at the library or buy, and good luck. And so it was sort of like, great. And then they used the verbiage like chemically imbalanced. So I immediately felt like, what is wrong with me? So as soon as it kind of progressed in 11th grade, I didn't put two and two together other things. I kind of drank coffee in the morning in high school, and that would just send me, having racing heart and that type of thing. And then I was a competitive dancer. And so it was really hard because I was dancing probably 25 hours a week. It was like my life. So there was a point where I walked off stage in the middle of a performance because I disassociated, like I had like derealization. And so it was really hard because leaving school and going to homeschool, like kids were like, you're a weirdo, like, where have you been? So yeah, definitely gave me this like label that was really, and there just wasn't a lot of people that knew what that was. So then fast forward, I get married really young and I'm having just lots of anxiety, lots of panic attacks. I'm not good at staying alone in my very first apartment with my husband. So I lean on my parents like a ton. And my mom and dad were always like safe people to me, more so my mom. So my mom, like, never really did a lot of research and was like, oh, what is this? But she was always like my safe person. So she would take me everywhere, drive me everywhere, and just sort of go like, "This is just who you are, you're fine," like, just you're gonna have to live with it kinda thing, and not in a mean way, but just like you gotta keep
Yeah.
going. Anyways, my marriage ended after 5 years, and I had this really weird period where I didn't have anxiety, so that was strange. I think I was more like kind of getting back myself. I had been really a shell of myself and been sort of emotionally abused and stuff like that, and so I think I was only 25, and I was just kinda like, "I wanna go have fun." And so I had some really interesting periods of time where I could go out and party and go with friends. And I never really did a lot of that growing up because it gave me anxiety to drink alcohol. that type of thing.
Yes.
So I didn't get to experience that really in high school. I was more like, if you guys want to hang out, come to my house, and I'll be in my room, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, basically I went through that period and then I took Accutane for my face when I was around like 18. And I didn't realize that that has a really bad effect mentally on people. So it makes people like suicidal. It's like a really strong, crazy drug. And I didn't know that. So I took that for a year. And that threw me into agoraphobia. Like I had never been agoraphobic previous to that. And so there was a period of time where I remember maybe a couple months, I'm not sure, I can't really remember the time, but I couldn't leave the house.
Yeah.
And that was crazy because that had never, ever happened to me. I always had been the kind of person that just, like, grinned and bared it and went to the dance competitions. I remember teetering on that edge of, like, I'm gonna go crazy right now. Like, because I didn't know what was happening to me, and I didn't have any literature or any verbiage for it. So I actually, when I was around 16, 17, 18, I thought I might go crazy. And I have journals, like, I used to write extensive journals, and, I mean, there's verbiage in there saying, like, "I think I'm gonna end up in a mental hospital."
Yeah.
So, after my divorce, I had a period of time where I was, kinda living in life. I had a good job, and I kept moving up and felt safe, you know? And then 28, 29, I met my husband now, who I've been married to for 16 years, and it kind of all flooded back because I think I my mom and I had rented a house together, and, I think that I was sort of still depending on her a lot, so when I got with my husband, I kinda had to face all of it again. So that safety net I kind of, created was sort of, like, broken, and I really, really wanted to be healthy for him, and so I realized then, like, how much I needed help, and so, I got therapy. It helped a little bit, but so I am now 47, and I could say that my anxiety has gone through phases. Like, I've gone from being completely claustrophobic to getting in an elevator to being completely fine with that. I've done really big trips. I would say that I'm similar to you and Shannon, that I was like a really high functioning
Mhm.
person with anxiety. So you really didn't know unless I told you, but I was always getting dropped off at work. Every new job I started, we moved a lot. My husband was in the military. After a while, people were like, "Do you drive to work?" And I'm like, no, and we just have one car, and I would make excuses for that.
Yeah.
And so I just remember, going to therapy for 3 years, and I really worked through a lot of, like, figuring out why I got anxiety, like, kind of, what it does to me, blah, blah, blah. But, over the years, I've gone to different therapists, and they've tried exposure therapy. I've tried medications, and I am one of those people that do take an anti-anxiety medication, and it works for me, and it always has. And so I'm just one of those people that doesn't scare me. I don't really have health anxiety, so I'm like, sure, like if that's gonna help. But I've also been dealing with this for over 30 years. So, I've had to try a lot of things.
Yeah, and when you find something that's helpful, you kinda just have to allow it to be helpful, like, that's okay.
Yeah, well, and I think back then it was like, it was sort of like the only option because I became like housebound. They were like, "You need medication." I remember being given Xanax and totally whacking me out, and I was like, "What is this? Like, I don't wanna take this." But over the years, I have taken Xanax because they really scared me about it because I don't like drugs or things like that, and I've never done any recreational drugs, but, like, when they said it's, like, highly, highly addictive, I was like, "Oh, no, I don't." So I
Right.
would only use it in, like, the worst case scenarios if I could not stop a panic attack. But you know what I did actually to just deal with my life was to make it completely, like, to the point where I didn't have to feel anxiety, which is what brought me to your program, because I made my life such that on the outside, you could be like, "Oh, she's fine, she does all these things, she goes to work," but I was doing it all in a way that was controlled, and I wasn't driving there. I felt safe in the fact that people were at work, so after I got comfortable somewhere, I'm like it was almost like babysitting. That's what I felt like. If, say, my husband was gonna go to town or, like, on a trip or, like, something like that, I would go stay with my parents or my mom or, somebody would drive me, and I had all these people in my life that even friends that would do all that for me. And so I spent years, probably 20 years, just doing that. And my husband pushed my boundaries to go on big trips. Like, I think I know I told you I went to Spain and did the Camino, and I had a lot of anxiety on that, but I did it. But that's because I had him. And a lot of that trip I was paranoid to lose him.
Mhm.
So I didn't have the full experience, like, because I didn't have safety in myself.
Yeah, your experience is such a common experience, right? You, for years, have gone with this lack of safety within yourself, within your body. And like you said, it really became heightened when you started to restrict and limit and started to rely heavily on people, right? And when we do that, you don't really even notice so much that you're doing it to the level that you are. And people unfortunately kind of just enable you because they're just wanting you to be okay. Like they want you to be okay and they want you to be able to do things. And so people will kind of just adapt and enable. And it can go on for a very long time, like it did for you.
Yeah, and, when you say, like, you don't really know you're even doing it, I did know because I am, like, my biggest critic, and so if you read my journals over the years, it is a complete narrative of, "When am I gonna get over this? I have to get over this." And so in my brain, that was really sad, which is, like, one of the biggest freedoms I have now is that I don't look at other people. So I would work at any job, and I would look at these people, and in my mind, I was thinking, that girl has so much free like, she doesn't have to do that. When I worked at Starbucks, when I was getting my bachelor's degree, I would do the drive-through, and they would drive by, and, I mean, I can't tell you how many people I stared up through and said, "Wow, what is that like to go through that drive-through?" And, like, "That girl's so lucky. That man's so lucky. What a life they have. Look at their
Yeah.
dogs in the car. They're going by themselves." And I was, like, kinda shitting on myself all day long, every day.
Yeah.
And when I moved back here after a lot of life events, existential events will happen that will completely change your life. And one of those was my brother dying suddenly 8 years ago now. And when that happened, my anxiety heightened, of course, a lot. And I was beginning to have other symptoms that I hadn't had in a really long time. And so, like panic attacks at work, that had never happened to me in my life. Work was always a safe place for me. I always excelled. I moved up. People didn't know. So things started kind of falling apart like that. And it was really hard. Then we moved across the country to Texas for 1 year. And without telling a ton, like this has a lot of family stuff. And it was probably a lot of grief, decisions made from grief. But in that moment, in that place, things were so bad that I knew I needed to get better. Like, it was, like, now or never. Because like, at that time, I'm 37. When I went to my first therapist when I married my husband now, and I said, like, "I need help because I don't wanna ruin my marriage with my problems." I'll never forget going to her office and it changing my life. It was the most beautiful office, like, it had all of these books, which I'm, like, a complete book hoarder, and she was really, like, caring and loving, and we went through my family system. She was the only person that understood anxiety who didn't really suffer from agoraphobia, but she had a lot of other anxieties that she could relate, but, she would do something with me, which would walk me through a panic attack. "Well, if I'm gonna go there, like, okay, well, then what?" And I'd be like, "Well, then I'm gonna freak out. Well, and then what?" And I'm like, "Well, I guess I'll call my mom." "Okay, and then what?" "Well, I guess I'll calm down?" And that was my first, like, eye-opening, like, "Oh, like, okay, so I have to go through it." But I do believe that it, like, led me up to this place, and I truly believe in, like, I'm a spiritual person, not religious, but I truly believe that things happen in the right perfect timing as much as you don't wanna think that. But I wanted to be a therapist at that moment, like, when I was in her room, and I'm like, "Gosh, someday," but I'm like, too big, I can't do that." I mean, I can't drive somewhere by myself and go see clients, give somebody else advice? So it wasn't until I was, like, at our rock bottom over in Texas, like, no money, like, we just a bad idea that I'm, like, being my eyes open one day and I go, "We're going back to where," this town in Northern California where my husband's from. We're going back there because we lived here for, like, 6 years before Caleb got into nursing school after the military. I had a community here. I like it here. I can hike here. I love, all of it. There's snow. It's similar to kinda like where you live, except it's really hot in the summer, but there's lakes, there's everything. And, like, we're going back there. I'm literally getting a job at Starbucks, like, tomorrow. I'm gonna finish my bachelor's for free. I'm gonna use them for 2 years, and then I'm gonna literally get into my master's program, and I have not stopped since that moment. Like, I have been in school consecutively for 3 years straight.
And it's been incredible because I know when you were in the program, you were in school and working at Starbucks, and it's just like been such a wild ride. But I want to back up on something because I think this is really important to sort of highlight. that comparison, right? Like so many people struggle with this, and we're constantly, when you're in it, right? You are looking at everyone else and you're like, everyone else is normal and everyone else is fine and everyone can do things that are so hard for me. And like, it shouldn't be so hard, right? It's going through a drive through. But I know, right? That is like one of the meccas when you're struggling with panic disorder. In agoraphobia, stick me in a drive-through in a situation in which you cannot get out,
Yep.
and I remember having those moments, right, of like, "What am I gonna do?" Like, I would literally drive up over an embankment to get out of a drive-through.
Same, I've thought about that, like, "How do I get out of this one?"
Your brain goes to all the places, and it's so tricky because we compare ourselves to people who aren't struggling, right, with anxiety or just like, they're so normal and I'm not normal, and it's like, well, no, you're struggling with panic agoraphobia, they're not, so this comparison is not equal, and they're not having to struggle with the amount of fear and the symptoms and the thoughts, so, like, yeah, what's easy for them is easy because they're not struggling with what you are, but something might be incredibly hard for them. So it's so hard because we, as humans, we always compare. We are so good at comparing and beating ourselves up. It's so not fair, right, to do that to yourself. And I look at all the people that I work with every day and you, right? And I'm like, you are so inspiring. Like it working with all the people that I worked with has kicked my butt to do bigger, scarier things. Cause it's like, yeah, it's like if you can do that, are you kidding me? Like that's not small. That's not little. Like
No,
that is
no.
massive. So I think that's just so important because I know a lot of people struggle with that comparison. And also, you have a very, I don't want to say cliche, but it's such a cliche story, right? Of I was sort of always this anxious kid. I had reinforcement as a little kid of like big feelings are just not okay. And we're just going to sort of figure out how to manage them, cope with them, get rid of them, not feel them. And this is decades of that. And then you have all these life events happen, right? That, of course, are going to trigger anxiety. You don't really have the tools to navigate it because you were never taught it. And so you're like constantly thinking, there's something wrong with me. I'm broken. What the hell? Nothing's working. But it's like you were never taught how to make space with anxiety, how to befriend it, and how to carry it with you and not have it cause all the distress. So it's like these life events, good, bad, doesn't matter. Your system sort of just responds. And of course, when you have that long history of, we can't go there, we can't feel this, you get stuck on that cycle, and
Yeah, it's a loop.
yeah, it's like a loop, and it's like this roller coaster of, "I'm good. Oh, no, I'm not good. I'm good. No, I'm not good." And it's like, if you're finding yourself on that roller coaster of, "I have periods where I'm good, and then I have periods where shit hits the fan," likely because of stress, life events, all that, it's because you have never looked at the root and really dove into, how do I actually create a relationship with this and not keep trying to get rid of it and cope with it and manage it. And I think that's where you arrived finally at this place of like, I can't keep trying to cope and manage. Like, I have to look at this.
Well, I think too that, like, I'm also one of those cliche people that and I said this the minute I got in your program, I've done it all, like and I'm not one of those people that sat around. I mean, the minute those people at Kaiser at 14, 15 gave me a list of books, we went to the bookstore, we bought them. I mean, I literally bought the tapes of Dr. Claire Weeks, and it's like, I know that I've read literally, Shannon, I at one point, I had a collection of anxiety books, and I remember this, like, spiritual person at this, like, place telling me, like, get rid of them all because I was holding, like, energy in them and space in them, and I was like, "Oh, okay," and so, like, because I was trying everything, like, I was going to different people, I was going to, like, practitioners, and I mean, you name it, I've done it, tapes, back in people giving me stuff, and I've tried different medications, not a lot though, I've tried, like, 2 in my whole life, so it's not like a ton of them, but, the medication, it doesn't take any of that away, so for me, it just put me at a base level that I could kind of manage better, and when I went through my brother's death, like, I definitely if I hadn't been on that, I don't know what would happen because death and grief is unlike anything I've ever been through, what feels very uncontrollable. Like I couldn't it's not I didn't know what was happening to me. But to get back to what I was saying is like all of the tools, all of the things, it didn't matter what I was trying because I wasn't trying the right thing. And it wasn't until I found you on Instagram and I had gotten back here, and it was that year. Well, I was got back in like December 22. And then the next year, I found your program, like you just came up on Instagram, and I took your driving anxiety masterclass. And I was at that point when we got back. I transferred with Starbucks from Texas, and that it was like where I got my apartment and where the Starbucks was literally 3 minutes away. So I walked there a couple times, which was cool, and then me and my husband were like, "Okay, we're gonna need 2 cars," because my husband was working now. So he'd been in school for so many years. So it was like, do or die, like, you have to do it? And so I started driving, to Starbucks and back, and that felt pretty freeing because, like, just to walk into a job for the first time and be like, "Oh, I drove here." I had done that a couple times in my life. There was other times where I drove alone for little periods of time, but nothing, like, significant, like anyways, when I got into your program, I had my 2 dogs, and I know you remember this, and they're since both passed, but I just remember, like, I needed my husband for years took my dogs on hikes for walks, so my dogs do not like, to go down a street to go to the bathroom, and so it was the most stressful thing for me because I couldn't drive them to, like, a park or a thing? And so my dogs were, like, unhappy, and I remember freaking out about that because I'm like, "What am I going to do?" And so when I got into your program and started working with you and, joined Panic to Peace, actually, one of my big wins was by the time the program was ending, I had made it to the park around the corner. And that was huge for me at the time because it was like the relief that I had, and I know we talked about this in our groups and stuff that like what people felt with their children, how they could take their child to a park and play? And I couldn't only imagine, and I'm not a mom, but like, how you're like, "Mommy, I wanna go to the park." You're like, "Oh, not now." Yeah, like, I can't? It's like that would be really hard. And so just being able to see my dogs, like, in this park particular had all these trails, and I remember telling you, like, "I even walked farther than I thought I could," and that blew my mind. And then, what what you taught us was, basically to take it along with you and to, let it happen. And so I think the hardest thing for my brain to get around when I was doing your program was that I was going to have to feel.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you the truth. I hadn't been feeling for years. Like a lot of years, maybe 20 years. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
so I could say, "Oh, I haven't had a panic attack in forever," right? So it was really scary, and I just, for the listeners, it's like it's so hard because taking that Band-Aid off the very first time is really hard? And I had a lot of support in your program with other members and it was like, "You can do this," like and coming back each week and like or hearing other people doing little things like that too, and it was like, it's actually not little, it's huge. It's every time I went to this is the other thing that really surprised me was it takes a lot of runs to go through those things, to do those for them to become not scary anymore. And so, like, expecting that, there's this magic switch, which you say the very first time you're in your program, "Hey guys, guess what? There's no magic switch," you know, um, is really helpful because you're like, great, okay, that's okay. But, I was really like, this isn't going to work.
And I have to tell you, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that you said it, and so at every round, I have at least 2 or 3 people, and it's really quite beautiful because when I first started my program, it would kinda give me this, "Oh, shit," like,
Yeah.
I am so grateful that I get to help guide people, right, and support people, but it also feels like this incredible weight.
Yeah. Responsibility. Oh my God.
Yeah, like, of course, I want this to be helpful, of course, I wanna be, like, as supportive as possible, but I am not the magic thing, there is no magic thing, like, you are the magic thing, and I just help you to see that and help you through that and to build that self-trust, but I remember you saying in front of the group, "I don't think this is gonna work."
I'm like, "Hi, I'm Heather, and this is not going to work for me."
Yeah, yeah, and I'm like, now I love that. At first, when I started my program, I'd be like, "Oh shit, here we go." But now I love that to hear that because I know those are typically the people who are so committed because they have tried anything and everything. They're at the point where they're like, "I can't do this anymore and I have to actually fix this." And I know that leads to so much change. And so it no longer scares me, but it was just so funny because I remember you being so resistant, and I'm just like, "Here we go. We're gonna do this." And, like, you stayed so committed every week, but that didn't just turn off, like, I could see it as we were going through it, like, so much resistance, and I was like, it's gonna switch, but it takes a little bit because it is such a hard thing to be, like, accepting. It's okay that this is where I'm at. It's okay that this is gonna be hard, but now at least I have a support system. I have a group of people behind me. I'm not alone in this anymore, and, like, somebody can actually guide me, and I think that was so big for you, but it's just so funny when I have those people that I'm like, Here we go. It's this is I love it now." But yeah.
Yeah. When I was thinking about coming on your show and you asked me and I'll get into like if you want me to like what happened now because this is the biggest part of my life now that's made the big difference. And I've listened to almost every one of your podcasts and they're so helpful because when you don't have I can't have you every day. I can have a story and somebody that's like so when I've listened to so many of yours that I'm like what do I wanna say that is helpful to people, you know? And so I've really, really, really dealt with this for such a long time. And so what I wanna say that is the difference between everything I tried for 30 years and today, is that when I went into the program, your program, we had a group of people and we all kind of got along. And so then that ended, and obviously what you're doing now is like is exactly indicative of like what I think people need, which is your community, right? Because there was two people in our group that we just decided one off like, hey, do you guys want to meet, And so it was really nice to have those people that we kind of zoomed every once in a while, like every week or every couple weeks or something. And it kinda just kept the program principles in our minds, and so right after I ended your program, my husband and I have been wanting to buy a house forever, and obviously we live in California, okay? So we went to Texas. The reason why I went to Texas was to try to buy a house, and my husband is a veteran, so we have the VA loan. Anyways, long story short, we did not get a house, and we put on lots of offers, and, I feel like this just was not meant to be. So I noticed that the prices here were, like, similar to there, and I'm like, "Okay, well, what are we doing here where there's no hiking, no." So we come back here, and so shortly after that at Starbucks, we bought a house, and the house was, like so there's my town, and then 15 minutes up the freeway is another town. It's teeny, it's like 10,000 people, so there's not a lot here. You don't work here, you work in the other town. And so I was like, but my mom and dad live in this town, right? And so they moved up here with me, and my parents are in their mid later 70s, and I want to be near them, and I also want to be there to take care of them. And so I'm like in my little anxious brain, I'm like, "Well, I'll be right next to them, that's safe."
Yeah.
But I did spend an entire year at my apartment in Reading, the other town, and working at Starbucks and going home alone, walking my dogs, and Caleb wasn't there. So, I spent a lot of time getting used to being alone because I hadn't done that in years. So I was, very uncomfortable being alone because I always had the fear. My fear was if I have a panic attack and I can't make it stop or I don't even wanna feel it. So, calling someone's not even an option for me because that doesn't make me feel better. So, I just made it so far that I didn't wanna be alone at all. And so that was something that always really bothered me. So anyway, I kind of like was doing that already and it was uncomfortable. There was a lot of uncomfortable moments. So anyway, the one things that we did was on moving day, I had to follow, because we had 2 cars, I had to follow Caleb on the freeway, like, by myself, you know? So we were on the phone, everything fine. So I guess that would be kind of the first time I drove along the freeway, but
But you're not gonna count that, right? You're like, "No, no, no."
I'm not counting it. I actually forgot about it until we just talked about it right now. So I got all the way up here and we got our beautiful home, which I love. And I started being alone all the time. I quit my job at Starbucks. I had finished my bachelor's and I'd gotten into my master's, which is all online. And my mom lives about, let's say 8 minutes away, 7, 8 minutes away. So like I'm not like right next door, right? So I had to be in a whole new neighborhood. I don't know anybody. And immediately Caleb's gone. So I spent a lot of time, Shannon, in my house having to feel. And I have to be honest with, everybody who's listening is that that was uncomfortable. I had a lot of moments of discomfort and I got so good at being in discomfort that after a year, we just made a year in our house. I got to the point where I had a lot of moments of absolute just freedom and peace, and I had not felt that. I don't know if I have my whole life, if I'm being truly honest, because I've never been in a place that I allowed myself to get there by doing it every single day.
Yeah.
And, every single day. So what that led to was a whole year here doing my master's online, and the biggest thing was I'm in school to be a marriage family therapist, and I knew all along from the minute I started in Texas when I made that decision and got hired at Starbucks, and I got into ASU and started my bachelor's, I knew that 3 years down the line, I was facing a practicum, which meant I was having to go to an intern site, and I just kept telling myself, "1 chunk at a time, 1 chunk, don't think about that, don't go there, don't do that." So, I got a job here in town at a elementary school, and it was, like, 6 minutes away, and I remember talking to my 2 friends from Panic to Peace, and they were like, "You can do it," and so it was, like, great because I got started doing that, and then driving that drive was like nothing, and driving back and forth to my parents every day, I would have a lot of anxiety when I left their house, and I would be like I couldn't relax when I was at their house because I knew the drive was back was coming, and the drive back made me feel like I'm getting back to the house, nobody's there, and so I spent a year working on that and doing it almost every day, and now I don't think about it at all. I drive with ease in my town. I stop at stores. I go to the feed store. I know the guy Bob. We talk about my chickens. It's like I can pull off and get gas if I want. So, but that was all in my little safe little bubble town here, okay, which is got like one stoplight and that's a big boulevard. So it's really safe. So when I got my internship, I'm not going to lie to say that I had so much anticipatory anxiety, so much so that I almost sabotaged myself and said, I'm not going to do this. Like, I'm not doing it. I'm not, I literally got hired. I went for the interview. My mom went with me. She sat in the car and I went and got the interview. And in my interview, I was so nervous, which I'm not a person that gets nervous in interviews, that they wanted me immediately. And I'm like, I don't want it. No,
Yeah.
like, it was weird, and I felt weird that I wasn't even doing a really good interview because I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, "Don't do it?" So they're like, "Great, like, let's do this now." And then they said the worst thing I could have ever heard was, I thought it was gonna be 3 months from then when my actual practicum started. They said, "I would like you to check with your school, and you could start now doing pre-practicums." I was like, "No."
Right.
No, like, you want me to co and so, like, "Let's have orientation, like, onboarding next week on Friday." And I'm like, "No." Like, I c oh god, no. So I leave and my mom's like my mom's really funny. She's like, "Well, you wanted this." She's like, you did this. You wanted to do this. You got all this way
Right.
and you wanna do this. Heather, you're gonna have to find a way. And so she's like, "I will take you here a couple times, but I can't come every time, Heather. I can't sit in the room with you." I'm like, "I know, I know, I know. Okay, I get it, I get it." So I'm, like, trying to wrap my brain, trying to wrap my brain. So I think for my onboarding, my parents dropped me off. And then I got a ride actually with the lady. Okay, so it's kind of like it's a nonprofit, so they're, like, really nice people. So the lady actually, and this is so crazy about people with anxiety, is, like, you think that you're, like, the only person and that nobody feels this, okay? So the lady, I did not tell her that I don't drive. I literally lied, and I said my car was in the shop. And I'm gonna be real honest on this podcast, and, like, I feel like sometimes when you have panic disorder or agoraphobia, you become the best liar
Uh-huh.
to, like, make yourself seem normal. And so I did. I said, "Well, I don't have a car, but it's okay, I can get a ride." "Oh, no, I'll take you home. I don't live too far from you." I'm all, "Oh, okay." So this lady drove me home, and I felt like an idiot. Like, she was so nice about it, though, but in my mind, I'm like, "Heather, like, you're gonna have to figure this out." And so I was freaking out, Shannon. I was like, "I don't know if I can be a big girl and do this full all the way. I wanna be a therapist so bad. This place is so amazing, like, it's, like, exactly what I need for my internship, and it's paid, and I'm like, "What more could the universe give you?
Yeah.
You're gonna have to do the work?" And so, of course, I called you, and I'm like, "Shannon, I need a session because I know that I'm using, like." I know it's idiotic, and it's not idiotic, but I know it's, like, silly to call you because I already know in my brain that I just need you to reassure me
Yeah.
and to re-go over the principles with me, which I could have done in my paperwork or my book that I have of yours, but I don't know, I needed this touchstone, and so I did. I had a session with you, and then I had to drive. There's 3 different locations, and one of them is closer to me, and it's about 6 miles, and so I had to go that next Monday after that Friday orientation to my very first, like, supervision, and I'm like, I don't know. So my mom was on the phone with me, and so I do use safety behaviors and I'm aware of them, but they drop off for me. So I have like a pattern, like, and I'm not worried about that. And I think it's really helpful, actually. I'm like a proponent. I don't do anything else like snacks or anything like that. The only thing I do is a phone call, somebody in my ear, like to in case I freak out. But that falls away from me because, like, when I drive to my parents now back and forth, I don't talk to anybody. And I feel like in my brain, I know when I don't need to call someone. So and then I have to decide, am I calling someone because I just wanna say hello
Yeah.
and I have a few minutes before I get there? Or am I calling them because I'm using it as a crutch, right? So there's, like, that fine line. But I can ascertain the difference. Like, I can, discern, like, "Oh, I'm doing that, but I'm not."
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's because 'cause you're slowing down, right? And, like, we talk about that in the program, like, you've gotta ask, "What's my intention?" Like, "Why am I doing this?" And that's so important.
And I know myself well enough for so many years of getting better, going down, getting better, going down that I know what my safety behaviors are and then when they fall off. So, yeah, so I just literally got from my house and my mom's on the phone. She's like, "Heather, you can do this. You've done it." Because the thing that I have to say out loud too is that I drive everywhere if someone's in the car with me.
Yep.
I don't have a problem being a passenger. I'm not afraid of driving. I drove my parents back from Texas like 3,000 or however many miles that is. I drove there and back. Do I love huge traffic in big cities? No, but I can do it, you know? So I'm not like that's not my thing, but being alone is a thing. So I just got on the freeway and I'm like, "Oh my god," like, it's almost like an out of body experience, but you know, it wasn't too bad, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm safe, here I am," and we have a lot of big rigs up here because I go to Oregon and back, and so, like, you have to, like, kinda navigate that, and so it's, like, maybe 4 or 5 exits. I get there, I safely get there, and I'm like, "I freaking did it." Like, I did it, you know? My mom's like,
Yeah.
"Good." And so I go into my supervision, it's amazing. So every Monday, that was, like, no problem with me, that drive, because 'cause I'm like, "It's not far, I like this one." Well, then came the big one for the other place. And I was still working. So I'm at the school, I leave a little early, and I'm sitting in my car, and I'm supposed to go from there to there, right? It was, like, the farthest one, and I thought to myself, like, I okay, so I got really anxious, really, really anxious, and I sat in that car, and actually, I was the whole day sick to my stomach and having diarrhea, sorry, TMI, and having, just palpitations, and I haven't had anxiety like that in a really long time. And so I decided a half an hour before I left to take a very small, teeny portion of Xanax because I could not calm myself.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and that even kind of freaked me out because I don't take them ever anymore, so I'm like, "Am I gonna feel weird?" But I actually calmed down just a teeny, and then I got on the freeway, and my mom's like, "You just take it one exit at a time," and so I did, and so then I got to the exit that I had been anticipating for weeks in my mind that I was going to freak out at because it would have been the farthest point I'd been. So and then after that exit is a very long stretch with no exits, and I thought, "That's where I'm gonna freak out," okay? And I know I told you this in my email, but when I got to that exit, I don't know for why, but I actually had this big, huge, peaceful release. And I'm just to my mom, I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm to this exit. Oh my god, I'm past it." And she's like, "Just keep going. You're fine. Keep going." So then I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm getting off the freeway." And then even when you get off the freeway, it's a few more miles to the place. And then I got there. And it just, it just felt like unreal, to be honest, like unreal. And it was like almost 11 miles.
Like, when you sent me that email and I'm looking at this and I'm like, I knew you were gonna do it. I had no doubt in my
I
mind.
did not know I was going to do it.
But right. We always think, "There's no way. How's this gonna happen?"
Mhm.
But that email, I was just sitting there, of course, I, like, get teary, and I'm like, holy shit, how many years you went with feeling such a lack of safety and a lack of trust, and to do this and to face it, like, this was like one of the biggest things, right?
It's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah. Like you had done so much work. And that's why I think the point I want to drive home here is I work with so many people every day who will be like, "Great, well, I need to face it. I need to do it. I need to drive. I need to get on the highway. I need to da da da." And I'm like, "Yes, yes, yes, great." Like, sure. If those things are important to you, we want to work toward that. But the best practice that you're going to do to be able to do that stuff is in your everyday. So, I don't care if you're getting in the car every day and getting on the highway or doing all these drives or forcing yourself to do mundane, awful shit. If you're not letting yourself feel in your day to day and you're not practicing leaning in when it pops up and you're not having that healthy response, it doesn't matter how much driving, how much forcing. And so it's like you didn't need to do all the forcing. It wasn't Heather needs to get on the highway. Remember when we met, right? And you were like, "I'm gonna have to do this." And I'm like, "Great. We're not planning, prepping, preparing. Like, you've already been doing this shit for months. So we don't need to do anything. Like, chill. Let yourself just be and go through all this because it's already stressful enough, right? Like, starting a new job and an internship and, like, having to learn all this stuff, and, like, that's overwhelming. We don't need to add forceful trips on the highway to make sure that you're going to be able to make it to the site the day that you have to. Like, it's gonna happen. And maybe you can't see how, right? And you don't have that trust of it's gonna happen, but, like, imagine that you did it, right? And, like, it just goes to show when you do that intentional work of building that trust and allowing yourself to feel, it comes into play
Yeah,
in every place, every situation, every scenario, and it does not need to be forced.
it does. Now that I've been doing this for, let's just say, a year straight, or even a little bit more than that, but I would say since I moved here, to this house, like, the other thing, like, when I first moved in here and I was scared to be alone, I was uncomfortable to be alone, I would do a lot of, like, looking out the window, like, "Who's home? Da, 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 da," and I remember talking to one of your former students about that, like, when we were chit-chat, I'm like, it's and she was saying she does that sometimes, and then I remember one day going, I don't even do that anymore, and I think the biggest click for me, and I told you this in my email, honestly, is something that I believe that if somebody doesn't have what we have, cannot teach it, which is why your program is so key to recover, is the safety within your self piece. Like, I had to teach my therapist, like, my own personal therapist about that because she's so unhelpful, and I don't mean it in a mean way, but it's like she doesn't understand. But I remember thinking the very first thought that I had like this was I was in the house and I had been driving so much to my parents and back into school and back into, to be, go to my job and everything. And I said, the first time I said, well, I feel a little anxious. What if I have a panic attack? And you know what I thought? I can still get in the car and drive. And that was mind blowing to me because one time going to that park in the very beginning, I did have a full blown panic attack where I like had dizzy and I had to pull over and my mom was on the phone and I had a panic attack and I let it right out and then I said, "You know what? I'm not going to let this happen to me." And I drove down to the park and I took my dogs on a walk. And so I proved to my nervous system, to my brain, and I rewired that to say I can have a panic attack anywhere and still be okay. And that's the thing that I spent 20 plus years saying I couldn't do. And so it was that proving that to myself that made it so that I could keep taking small steps. And so when I'm on the freeway and I'm driving and I'm like, what if I have a panic attack right now? I say to myself, so what? It doesn't do anything to you. It is uncomfortable and that's it. And it is literally just going to go away because it can't stay at that height forever. And so I waited to, like, contact you because I'm like, "Well, what if that was a
Right.
one-off? Like, what if I don't go back and drive
Yep.
again?" So I wanted to scream from the rooftops the first time I made it to the one close to me, but I was like, I'm not doing it yet," which is sad that we think like that, but I had 4 Mondays under my belt of driving, to the place close to me, and then I did the other far place, and then there was one other place that I had to go recently. And, so there's 3 locations, so now I've been to them all. And so this week, because I quit my school job early so that I could just jump into my internship, 'cause there's only a couple weeks left of school. I've done, like, 8 clients this week, like, sit-ins, like, shadows, and I have my very first client starting next Tuesday, like, a recurring. So I drove to my site, like, several times, and I just the amount of peace and also it's that I feel like I'm truly me, and that's like I'm a whole like person now. Like I'm a whole adult. Like I don't have that sad feeling of like that I'm like a child in a sense. It makes you feel very childlike to need people, to be dependent on people, and it's embarrassing. And I spent a lot of time and shame in my life, a lot of shame. And I'm so with that first drive, I truly do feel like I healed that shame. I walked into that place and said, like, I did this. Like, I got myself here. I put myself through school. I'm creating the rest of my life. And I'm not letting anxiety and panic disorder do that to me anymore. And I remember feeling like when I first was started your program, the verbiage of recovered bothered me
Yeah.
because I felt like and I see now that that was me telling my mind, "You don't ever have to recover, Heather. That's not real."
Mhm.
Just to give myself that out. And I can truly say, like, I truly do feel that I'm not suffering anymore from disordered anxiety. And I've been waiting to say that for 2 years. And I told my therapist that. She's like, "Well, what will make you?" And I told her, I said, "You know what? I'll feel like whole and I'll feel better about myself when I'm driving to my intern site by myself and coming home." And I literally just made that happen. And that's what I've been like working towards for 2 years.
It's so insane, Heather. Like, it's been so amazing to see you go through all of this and be on this journey and so committed to you and creating this healthy relationship with anxiety and, like, just I mean, what we talked before we jumped on, it's wild that the highway, right, was something you didn't do for decades.
20 years I didn't drive by myself on a highway.
Yeah, and it's such a common like, this is one of the most common things, right? And just doing things alone is such a common thing. It's such a hard thing because you don't have that trust, you don't have that safety, and it's not something that can be forced, and I think that's where a lot of different people in the recovery world kind of do this disservice to people is kind of telling them and convincing them like you just have to face the fear, you just have to do it, you just and it does not work that way. So it's just and this work that you've been doing right for years is going to stick with you for the rest of your life, and like it's no more roller coaster of I'm good, I'm not good, I'm good, I'm not good. Like we chose to get off that roller coaster. No, thank you, not doing that again, and I am just so insanely proud of you because now to be where you're at, like, you didn't think that this would happen, but, like, holy shit, you're a therapist. Like,
I know. Is that like wild? Like that's so
it's
wild.
so cool. It's the
It's
coolest
like
thing.
literally 17 years of thinking of doing that and then actually doing it. And I want everyone to know too, like I'm still scared every time I get on the freeway right now. But it's just because I know, and this is where I feel like I'm not disordered anymore because I know that that's normal and my brain's still rewiring. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with using a safety behavior and calling my mom if I need to. I'm okay if getting a little reassurance and grounding. And I'm going to teach my clients that, we're all just trying to regulate our nervous systems. And until we can learn to do that and then step into facing the fear with a grounded nervous system, then because I even having a yoga certification, like I took yoga school, I mean I have read all the self-help books, gone to different churches, like whatever, it's like all the spiritual books, so Ram Dass and Eckhart Tolle, and nothing ever like penetrated here because it has to be action. Period, the end. Your body will not rewire anything, trauma, nothing until you actually use somatic, like, which is getting in that car, which is the mind body connection. And that's what I'm just so excited to share. And if anyone has agoraphobia, like, please come to me because I can, like, show, because you're the greatest gift, Shannon. Like, you are, because, Oprah said, I'm going to quote her for it, make your message your mess.
Do it.
Did it. Maybe I'll be on our couch someday. Just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. She doesn't have a show. No, but like make your message your mess, right? I mean, make your mess your message, and you've done that. And I really encourage anyone to be a part of your community because we kind of cheated and made our own little baby community when I got out. And I don't think I would have gone as far if I didn't have that. And so I'm really grateful to that for those two ladies. And then I knew after that, I just kept doing the program. So your program is amazing.
Oh, I love it. And you're so right. It takes that action, right? And it's also the action of supporting yourself. Like you got to support yourself through it because it is so dang hard. And I just I think I want to emphasize here too, right? Like you were right. Like my program didn't work. It wasn't the thing that worked for you. Like you are the thing that brought it all together, and it's just so cool when I can help people see, like, "No, no, no, you have everything that you need. We just need to uncover it, and we need to support you better," and, like, when that happens, it will change. So it's just so cool. You were so resistant. I can see the Heather that joined that first live to the you now, and it is mind-blowing. I am just so incredibly proud of you. So proud of you.
Well, I thank you so much because I'm really glad you have your community now because I think that was the missing link, for people with this disorder and this issues in their life. We do need a lot of reassurance because we are in our mind a lot and we are really hard on ourselves. And I think that's the most important thing is even if you pop on and say they're part of your community and they're like, I got to go to this thing. And you got four people saying, you totally got this. Or remember when you're doing that, the safeties, whatever it is.
It's one of the coolest things, like, it's every day in my community, now there are over 50 people in it, which is just wild, and the group is just so I always say, like, I don't know how I get the best people in the world and, like, people that I wish I could be friends with and just hang out with, and it's such a good group, and it's exactly that, like, you're having a hard day, you've got people that are there. You're doing something hard, you've got people there. Like, you have a question, you got people there. Like, it's something that I wish I obviously would have started years ago, but I wasn't. I think that's the difference, right, is knowing where you're at, and knew I wasn't ready for it, but now 1,000%, like, this is happening right where it's meant to, and I can be as helpful as possible, so
Right, right.
yeah, yeah, it's so good, but I am just so glad that you took the program, so glad that you made that investment in yourself and, like, really stuck with it because it paid off 1,000%.
And it's going to continue, and that's the thing too, that like, you know, I'm not ever going to be. Maybe I will. I don't care about that though. Free of anxiety. I used to look for it to just be gone completely and instead changing your mindset to just bringing it with you. And when you change that relationship with it, it changes everything and it can be something that doesn't control you anymore. It's just with you. It's okay. It's just okay.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much, Heather, for coming on, for being vulnerable, for sharing, for just offering your wisdom. And it's just so cool. And I'm so, so dang happy for you.
Thank you. It feels very full circle. So I'm excited that this happened because it makes me feel like okay, like I'm on to the next phase of my life, and that is to be a therapist. So
So freaking proud of you. And you're going to help so many people. And we'll definitely talk very soon.
thank you.
I hope you loved this episode of A Healthy Push. If you have, I'd be so grateful if you could leave me a rating and review wherever you're listening to this podcast. This helps people to find the show and get the support they need. And if you know someone who could use a little push, be sure to share this episode with them. And for even more support, head over to ahealthypush.com for show notes and loads of tips, tools, and inspiration to help you on your recovery journey. I'll see you next week.